The wine hit my hands before I even saw it coming. Cold. Dark red. Running down my knuckles and dripping onto the white tablecloth, like something had just been executed at this table. "You're just a parasite feeding on my husband's legacy," Victoria said, setting the empty glass down with the calm precision of a woman who had rehearsed this moment in a mirror. Nobody at the table moved. Not the waiters. Not the investors seated 2 chairs down, pretending to study the dessert menu. Not my father, who kept chewing his steak like I was a fly he'd already decided not to swat. I looked down at my hands. $800 Bordeaux, soaking into my sleeve. "Julian, say something," my father finally muttered, not even looking up. "Don't embarrass your stepmother in front of my guests." That single sentence told me everything I needed to know about the last 10 years of my life. I picked up my napkin, wiped my hands slow, and set it down folded, neat, deliberate, the way you fold something you're about to walk away from for good. "Harrison." Victoria's voice sharpened, the way it always did when she smelled a win. "Sign the release. Now. In front of everyone. Or we do this the hard way." She slid a document across the table, the same one her lawyer had emailed 3 times this week. "Waive remaining inheritance rights. Cover Blake's temporary liquidity issue." Her words, not mine. I'd read the actual numbers. $11 million gone. Offshore accounts I wasn't supposed to know about. "I'm not signing anything," I said. Victoria's smile didn't move, but something behind her eyes did. "Then you're nothing to this family," she said, loud enough for the whole private room to hear. "You never earned anything. You've been living off scraps since your mother died, and everyone at this table knows it." A few investors actually laughed. Soft, polite, cruel. I felt my jaw tighten, but not from anger. From something closer to relief, because I'd been waiting 3 years for this exact moment, and I hadn't known it until right now. I reached into my coat. The envelope was black, wax-sealed, heavier than it looked. Arthur Vance's attorney had handed it to me 4 months ago in a quiet office on LaSalle Street, with instructions I still hadn't fully processed. "Do not open this until the moment it matters most. You'll know when." Victoria's own father. A man she'd spent the last 2 years of his life avoiding, convinced he was too senile to matter. He'd seen more than any of us gave him credit for. I slid the envelope across the table to my father. "What is this?" Harrison said, not really a question, more like a man buying time. "Open it," I said. "Read the first sentence. Then decide who the parasite is." Victoria's hand shot toward it. "Harrison, don't." Too late. He'd already broken the seal. I watched his eyes move across the first line. Watched the fork slip from his fingers and hit the plate with a sound sharp enough that 3 tables turned to look. His face didn't just go pale. It went empty, like something inside him had quietly stopped working. "Harrison." Victoria's voice cracked for the first time all night. "What does it say?" He didn't answer her. He looked up at me instead, really looked, maybe for the first time in a decade, like he was seeing a stranger sitting where his son used to be. "Is this true?" he whispered. "Page 2, I said. "Keep reading." His hand was shaking now. Victoria reached for the paper and this time he pulled it back, out of her reach, like it was suddenly the only thing in the room he trusted. That's when the glass in Victoria's hand slipped and shattered against the marble floor. And that's when I realized, the real revenge hadn't even started yet. She still didn't know about Blake. Nobody moved to clean up the broken glass. It just sat there, scattered across the marble, catching the light from the chandelier, while my father's hands trembled around a single sheet of paper. "Harrison, give me that." Victoria's voice had lost its polish. Underneath the calm she'd worn all night, something raw was showing through now. "Sit down," Harrison said. Quiet. Almost a whisper. But it landed harder than if he'd shouted. Victoria sat. I hadn't seen her obey anyone in 10 years. Not once. Not my father, not the board, not even her own son. But something in his voice tonight made her fold, and for the first time since I'd walked into this restaurant, I let myself believe the envelope was working exactly the way Arthur Vance intended. Page 2, I reminded him. Harrison turned the page with fingers that didn't look like they belonged to the man who'd built half the skyline in this city. His eyes moved down the paper. Stopped. Went back up. Read it again. This can't be right, he said. What? Victoria snapped. What can't be right? He looked at her the way you look at someone you're meeting for the first time. Blake isn't mine, Harrison said. The words landed on the table like the glass had, shattered, impossible to put back. For a second Victoria didn't respond at all. Then she laughed. Short, brittle, wrong. That's insane. That's, Harrison, whatever Julian gave you, it's forged. He's desperate. He's trying to destroy this family because he can't stand watching Blake succeed where he failed. It's a DNA report, I said. Filed with your father's estate attorney 14 months before he died. Notarized. Cross-referenced with Blake's medical records from the surgery he had 2 years ago. Your father paid for a private lab in Geneva to run it twice, because he didn't believe it either the first time. Victoria's face had gone the color of the tablecloth. You've been planning this, she said, and for the first time she was looking directly at me, not through me. How long? Since the funeral, I said. Your father pulled me aside during the reception. Told me he'd made mistakes trusting the wrong people with what he built. Told me he was tired of watching me get treated like garbage in a house I helped keep standing. Then he told me to wait. Said I'd know when the moment came. You're lying, Blake said, standing up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. He'd been quiet the whole dinner, scrolling his phone under the table like none of this concerned him. Now his face had gone tight, defensive, the mask slipping. This is insane. Dad, you're actually listening to this. Sit down, Blake, Harrison said, still staring at the paper. I'm not sitting down for some fake document Julian probably printed at Kinko's. I said sit down. Blake sat, but his hands were shaking now too, and I watched something click behind his eyes, not shock exactly. More like a man realizing the floor he'd been standing on for 25 years had never actually been there. There's a third page, I said. Harrison's eyes snapped to mine. Turn it. His hand hesitated over the paper like it might burn him. Harrison, don't, Victoria said, and this time there was something underneath her voice I hadn't heard before. Fear. Real fear, not performance. Why, Harrison said, turning to look at her. Why shouldn't I turn the page, Victoria? She didn't answer. He turned it anyway. I watched his eyes move across the document, the transfer records, the shell company registered in Blake's name 6 months ago, the deed to the Lakeshore mansion quietly retitled while Harrison was recovering from his knee surgery in April. Every signature. Every date. Every wire transfer, right down to the offshore account in the Caymans, that had received $11 million over the last 14 months. This is our house, Harrison said. Not to me. Not to Victoria. To the paper itself, like it might explain how none of this had happened in front of him. It's not anymore, I said quietly. Victoria transferred it to Blake's holding company in June. Blake's holding company is leveraged against 3 failed hedge positions and 2 gambling debts in Macau. Which means the house you're sitting 60 feet from right now doesn't belong to either of you. Then who does it belong to? Harrison asked, and I could hear it in his voice. He already knew the answer, and he was terrified of hearing it out loud. I let the silence sit for a second. 2 investors near the bar had stopped pretending not to listen. A waiter froze mid-step by the kitchen doors, tray balanced, eyes wide. Me, I said. Your father-in-law restructured the family trust 8 months before he died, Victoria. Everything you thought you controlled, the firm, the mansion, the holding companies, it's all been sitting inside a trust with my name as sole executor since March. You've been running a company you don't legally own for almost half a year. Victoria's mouth opened. Nothing came out. That's impossible, she finally said. My father would never. Your father saw exactly what you were, I said. He just waited until you couldn't undo it. Harrison set the papers down slowly, like his hands had stopped working. He looked at Victoria. Looked at Blake. Looked at me. There's a fourth page, I said. You should probably read that one before anyone says another word. Victoria's eyes went wide. Harrison, don't you dare. But he'd already turned it. I watched my father's eyes drop to the fourth page, and for the first time all night, his hands went completely still. Not shaking. Not trembling. Still, in the way a man goes still right before something in him breaks for good. Read it out loud, Victoria said. Her voice had changed again, not fear now, something closer to desperation. If you're going to destroy me in front of everyone, at least have the decency to say it to my face instead of hiding behind paper. Harrison looked up at her. You want me to read it out loud? Yes. Fine. His voice was flat, hollowed out. He looked back down at the page. March 14th. A wire transfer of $400,000 from the Sterling Family Trust to an account registered under Victoria Van Sterling, memo line, consulting fee. Except there was no consulting done. Because 2 weeks later, another $400,000. Same memo. Same pattern, every month, for the last year and a half. He looked up. That's $7.2 million, Victoria. Paid to yourself. From my company. I built that company as much as you did, Victoria said, and now her voice cracked completely, 10 years of careful performance collapsing in real time. I sat through every gala, every board dinner, every ridiculous fundraiser, smiling next to you while you took the credit for decisions I made. You think I didn't earn that money? You stole it, Harrison said. From a company you don't even legally control anymore, because your own father took it away from you before he died. Do you understand how that sounds? He was manipulated, Victoria snapped, turning toward me. By him. Whispering in my father's ear during his final months, telling him lies about me, turning a dying old man against his own daughter. I visited your father 4 times in the hospital, I said, quiet but even. You visited him once. For 11 minutes. I have the visitor logs, Victoria, because your father asked the hospital to keep them. He knew you'd try to rewrite this story eventually. The room had gone completely silent. Even the ambient restaurant noise seemed to have dropped away, like every waiter, every guest, every person within earshot had made the unconscious decision to stop breathing so they wouldn't miss what came next. Blake stood up again, but slower this time, less bravado in it. Dad, he said. None of this changes anything between us. I'm still your son. I've been your son for 25 years, paper or no paper. Harrison looked at him for a long moment. Did you know, he asked. About the transfers. About the mansion. Blake hesitated. That hesitation answered the question before he said a word. I needed the house as collateral, Blake said finally. The debts were bigger than I told you. Mom said it was fine, said it was temporary, said we'd fix it before you ever had to know. How much? Harrison said. Dad. How much, Blake? 11 million, Blake said, barely above a whisper. Harrison closed his eyes. I'd waited 3 years to watch this exact moment happen, and now that it was here, I felt none of the satisfaction I'd imagined. Just a strange, heavy stillness, watching a man realize the family he'd built his entire identity around had been hollowed out from the inside while he wasn't looking. Get up, Harrison said to Victoria. Harrison, please, we can talk about this privately, we don't need to do this here, in front of. Get up. She stood, shaking now, mascara starting to streak. Everything you signed away is already gone, I said, standing myself, buttoning my jacket. The trust converted to my sole control the moment your father's estate cleared probate. That was 6 weeks ago. Every asset you thought you still had access to, frozen. Every account you thought was private, already flagged by the estate attorneys. The only reason nothing's happened publicly yet is because I was waiting for tonight. Why? Harrison asked. His voice had nothing left in it. Why wait for tonight? Why do this here, in front of everyone? I looked at Victoria. At the wine still drying on my sleeve. Because 10 years ago, you let her humiliate me at every dinner in this family, and you never said a word, I said. I wanted you to understand, in front of the same people who watched her do it, exactly what she cost you while you were busy staying quiet. 2 men in dark suits appeared at the entrance of the private room, the security team I'd arranged with the restaurant's manager 3 hours earlier, per the instructions in Arthur Vance's letter. Mr. Sterling, one of them said to Harrison, out of professional courtesy. Then he turned to Victoria and Blake. Ma'am. Sir. We need you to come with us. Julian, Victoria said, and for the first time in 10 years, my name in her mouth didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like someone drowning. Please. Whatever you think we did. There's a 5th page, I said. Harrison hasn't gotten to it yet. Everyone froze. Harrison looked down at the folder, hands trembling again as he turned to the final sheet. I watched the color drain from what was left of his face. This is a foreclosure notice, he said slowly. On the firm. Dated for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. There's an auction, I said. Sterling Real Estate Holdings. Full liquidation, unless someone steps in before 9 a.m. to acquire the outstanding debt and controlling shares. Who's bidding? Harrison asked, though something in his face told me he already suspected the answer. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. Me, I said. The room stayed frozen for a moment that felt like it stretched on forever, Harrison staring at the foreclosure notice, Victoria staring at me, Blake staring at nothing at all, like his whole future had just evaporated somewhere between the 4th page and the 5th. You, Harrison said. You're the one bidding on my own company. Your company stopped being yours the day you let Victoria run it into the ground while you signed whatever she put in front of you, I said. I'm not bidding against you, Dad. I'm the only reason there's anything left to bid on. The security team stepped closer to Victoria and Blake. One of them gestured toward the exit, polite but firm, the way people are trained to be when a scene needs to end quietly. This isn't over, Victoria said, backing toward the door, mascara streaked halfway down her face now, the composure she'd worn like armor all night finally gone completely. You think a piece of paper makes you better than us? You think this makes you family? You were never one of us, Julian. You were always just a parasite, I said. You already said that part. An hour ago. Right before you poured wine on my hands. She had nothing left to throw at that. Blake didn't even try to speak. He just followed her out, shoulders slumped, phone still clutched in his hand like it might ring with an answer that would fix any of this. It wouldn't. I'd already had the estate attorneys freeze every account connected to his name that morning. The doors closed behind them, and for the first time all night, the private room was just me and my father. Harrison sat there for a long moment, staring at the 5 pages spread across the tablecloth, like they were pieces of a bomb that had already gone off inside his chest. I should have seen it, he finally said. Any of it. All of it. You should have, I agreed. I wasn't going to pretend otherwise, not tonight. I let her convince me you were the problem, he said. For 10 years. My own son. And I just believed her. Because it was easier than looking at what she actually was. I sat back down across from him, the wine stain on my sleeve already gone cold and stiff. Arthur saw it before any of us did, I said. He told me something in that hospital room I didn't understand until tonight. He said the people who need to announce their loyalty the loudest are usually the ones planning to leave first. Victoria never stopped announcing hers. Every gala. Every board dinner. Every dollar she spent proving she belonged in this family. Harrison looked up at me, and for the first time since my mother's funeral, I saw something in his face that wasn't pride or control or performance. Just an old man, finally out of ways to avoid the truth. What happens now? He asked. To the company. To me. The auction happens at 9 a.m., I said. I already have the financing lined up. The firm gets recapitalized under the trust. Every employee keeps their job. Every legitimate contract stays intact. The only thing that changes is who's actually in control, which, if we're being honest, hasn't really been you for the last 6 months anyway. And me, he said again, quieter. What happens to me? I stood, buttoning my jacket, the same motion I'd made 100 times over the last 10 years, walking out of rooms where I wasn't wanted. You traded a loyal son for a gilded poison, Dad, I said. I didn't come here tonight to destroy you. I came to buy back everything she cost you, the company, the name, the thing you spent your whole life building. What you do with what's left is up to you. But I'm not doing it as your employee, and I'm not doing it as an afterthought at the family table anymore either. He didn't say anything. There wasn't anything left to say. I walked out of the private dining room, past the shattered wine glass still glinting on the marble, past the investors pretending they hadn't just watched an entire family collapse over dessert, out through the front doors of the Grand Obsidian into the cold Chicago night. The rain had started while we were inside. I stood under the awning for a second, watching it come down over Michigan Avenue, feeling the stiff, dried wine on my sleeve for the last time before I'd throw the jacket away for good. 9 a.m. tomorrow, I'd walk into that auction and buy back everything that should have been mine from the start, not out of revenge anymore, but because somebody in that family had to actually deserve what Arthur Vance had spent his life building. It just turned out that somebody was me. The car pulled up. I got in, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't look back at that restaurant once.